Welcome to Heather Ewing, the CRE Rundown. I am your host, Heather Ewing, founder, CEO of Abstract Commercial Real Estate here in lovely downtown Madison, Wisconsin. And today I have the privileged guest, a fellow creative. I have Nasia from Pink House Designs. Welcome, Nasia.
Hi Heather. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So we've known each other for several years, but if you could share a little bit about you so that our guests get to know you a bit more.
Sure. Hello. My name is Anastasia Craig. Nastia is for short. It's easier for people to remember. So, I am an interior designer, and I am an independent designer at Pink House Designs. And I'm also an artist, and I am at Nastia Craig Art. And my work has mostly been in the commercial spaces, retail, hospitality, some corporate, with a little bit of residential. I think like the projects that are mostly familiar to people could be restaurants I've done, Sushi Red, Jackknife, Forage restaurant in Middleton on the Old Salk Road, as well as some of the Sub-Zero projects that I worked on, such as their Sub-Zero Museum, some of their corporate offices, and their retail spaces. But in Madison, I think it's probably going to be the restaurants because that's where everybody goes.
Well, and that's how I connected. Well, actually through mutual friends years ago, but that's when I first saw your work was at Red Sushi and I fell in love
Right.
with it. And I was like, ooh, I like it. It's bold. That lines up with my heart.
Yeah.
So backing it up a little bit, how did you get into the art and share a little bit more about how you ended up in the United States?
hmm Absolutely. So I have actually, I think with me, like with so many people that really started early age, I was always the creative kid, from just like my early years. I was always drawing, painting, sculpting, all that. And that just couldn't get enough of it. And kind of at probably age of 11, I started really wanted to take it seriously. And that's when my parents, they enrolled me with independent art studies with the teacher. So, and I've done it from that age on until I was um, graduating from high school. And then throughout the years, as I was kind of um, coming back home, and just doing independent work. And speaking of which, I was born and raised in Odessa, Ukraine. So that's where I'm originally from. And I think just kind of I think like being from Europe in being around European cities and then traveling, I think that's the environment was very kind of conducive to me. Just being inspired by a lot of just very grandeur, architecture and design and art, and public spaces that where just very well done, very beautifully done. And I think that was maybe kind of in the core of my mind always, having that sort of visual examples of beautiful environments. Kind of I knew I was going into creative field. So when I decided to go to school in the United States, I picked interior design. So I was doing that through the, in New York, upstate New York, and then Long Island, New York. And then I came to Madison after I graduated. And that's where I started working in the field. And but during that time, I still continued doing art. And I always wanted to do things more artistically and more like, again, I came with this idea of how like everything should be more grandeur, right? So everything should like design should be very powerful, very influential, exciting, bold. So that was always throughout the work I was doing. That's what I was trying to do with my
And I couldn't agree more. And I think that's how you and I melded too, of like the yellow. I love the yellow, bold colors. To me, there's a certain power, but also a simplicity, and it's clear, right? It's
yeah.
not cluttered and it makes a statement. So that's something I've aligned with quite a bit. And then do you paint in oils?
I studied that. I by nature, I'm very experimental, and I love
Mhm.
kind of doing different things. So I did back in the day used to paint with oils and also watercolor and gouache. That was and that was actually my work was a lot more. It was more like surreal. It was more.
Mhm.
It had more realism. Kind of elements, but then over the time I switched to abstract art, and that's more painting and collage. So even kind of some things that are behind me here as a backdrop, I have that those are my collage works that I've been doing in the past years. But again, um, just bold colors, kind of a lot of movement, organic
Mhm.
shapes, kind of with the juxtaposition of some angular elements and some shapes that are more dynamic and geometric. That's kind of how I like to play within my work. Just putting lots of just um, elements together. So.
Right. So then from a size perspective, because especially with like the commercial restaurants and other commercial interiors, is there a size that is kind of your sweet spot, or what's the minimum to the maximum, just to give people an idea?
Right. Yeah, and it's a very good question because, and especially as a designer, understand how the scale of the work is important. Because a lot of times, like an artwork within the space is a focal point, and a lot of times it does want to be a larger scale. So it takes in that space, and it's becomes that element that draws in. As an artist, sometimes you work by different standards.
Right.
It's working within what the artwork dictates you. Sometimes you start with a certain idea, or you're starting playing with certain colors and motifs, and you start putting it together, and you almost reading what that piece is telling you. So it's not always you're thinking about where it's going to sit in the space, but you're more thinking about the artwork. So to answer your questions more fully, I started with smaller sizes of works, because especially with this technique that I was doing, it's something kind of I develop myself by
Right.
mixing lots of different things that I learned throughout the years from different artists, from doing different workshops and things, and doing a lot of my own experimentation. So I did not want to start very big, but I wanted to understand this technique and work out the kinks. And as I'm continuing, though, I'm getting bigger sizes because as a designer, I know this is what people want to see. And I think the type of work I do looks really good in big size.
Yeah.
I'm doing it gradually, kind of getting right now into 30 by 30s, a lot more, 30 by 30 inches. 30 by 40s, my next step. But I would really like to do, and once I kind of know all the technical details, I would like to really do larger pieces, like multi-paneled, sculptural, complex. I've done some of that already, but I
Right.
want to kind of really take it to the next level, which is a lot, which is, means I had to, I had to learn a lot of other things I did not expect, like tools. Like I did not
Oh, I
know
bet.
when I
I bet.
started. that
Yeah.
I'll be using a saw and like sander, and that I'll need to be getting all these supplies and these cutting equipment, and it just became this whole different world, just because
Right.
I have yeah, so it's kind of requires some additional setup, some additional tools, and me learning how to use them. That's why it's taken a while.
Oh, I bet. Definitely. Well,
Yeah.
and two, you've been traveling throughout the United States for different shows too for several years. Share a little bit more about that process and how you got into that.
The shows, you mean the art
Hmm.
shows? It's been actually done more shows more regionally, I would say.
Hmm.
It hasn't been so much throughout the states. Some of my works have been. I've been
That's what I was
participating in some
thinking.
shows that would be in other cities when I would ship my artwork. So my art has traveled more than I did, I think.
Right,
But
right.
I'm gonna follow one day. Well, you'll see. One day, I'll do the same. So I had been doing mostly shows kind of in Madison and some Milwaukee recently, those
Hmm.
areas, and um, kind of some areas around. So
Yep, that's perfect. So here's a question. So when I was oil painting back in the
mhm.
day, and I've
Right.
loved color and art
Yeah.
from a very young age. But do you get the question frequently of how do you know when the piece is done?
Oh my goodness.
The
Yeah,
infamous question, right?
it's a great question because um do you ever know? I guess that's what my question is. Do you ever know? Because sometimes, and I've done that a few times when I feel like, okay, this is it, this is done, and I would call it done, photograph it, resin
Mhm.
it, and I have to resin after I photograph because the resin that I cover, as you can see, it has a lot of glare. It's very
Mhm.
difficult to photograph. So I would say like, okay, by this code of resin, I call this work finished. But no,
Right.
there would be, and I think that's every artist has that itch to come back and change their work now and then. Your mind changes. You see
Hmm.
it differently. Your perspective changes. You're in a different mood. You grow. I think that's
Definitely.
so many. We're not static beings. Things change around us and our mindset. So and I think it's okay, if you really feel that that this work needs it, it's asked it, um then you do it. You do what you feel as a creative, and I think that's what's so compelling about being an artist. You have that power, that
Mhm.
within this space, the space of your work, you have that control when you decide when it's done. It's not a deadline driven. It's not a client tells you. It's you who are in control and in charge of this piece. And you kind of the one who decides and who tells it when it's done and if it's ever done. you know it's
Right.
never done until somebody buys it and I don't have it
Right.
anymore.
Right. Have you ever tried going back on the resin?
Oh, yeah. Yes, which means
How
I
does
have
that
to.
work? Is it kind of like a water and oil thing? It just doesn't mix, or what
Yeah,
happens in
so
that scenario?
yeah, it's a technical thing. So for me to change resin, I have to sand it and then apply another coat of. So my work is actually, I did not say that step. It's done on this specialty. It's called Duralar. It's a specialty archival polyester film
Mhm. Okay.
that takes paint, and I can draw with art markers on it and do different effects to it. So I I create these paintings on this Duralar material, and then I cut them up. I manipulate them, kind of do additional drawings or painting, add them onto each other, and I resin them. So if I do want to change a piece, I have to sand it because, I'll have to coat it again later. And then I apply another layer. Sometimes I paint straight on the resin as well. And then, I seal it again. And sometimes it's more than once I've done it. So, which means, I think like doing this art practice really made me realize, I think I have like a case of OCD.
Well, I think to your point, like,
yeah,
we shift and change, similar to books, right? You read a book, you come back to it maybe a couple years later, reread it, and you pick up different tidbits or insights that you just didn't on the round before. So I think you nailed it on the head, that we're ever changing and evolving, and life is not static by any means.
Right. So, and I think, and that's sort of like also that maybe desire to be a bit of a perfectionist too. You always want to improve and add on, and you keep on looking for ways to do that. So I think that's also it.
That's where I say too, there's the art of the walk away. Sometimes you just need to put the brush down, tools, and walk away, come back later.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, ideally, that's what you should do. You should kind of at some, I think, was it Andy Warhol who said, like, no matter how good or bad it is, just finish it, and then start new, you kind of, it's a good idea to, even if a piece maybe is not, you don't feel it's your strongest one, to complete it, but then start new and do more and more and more and more. Yeah.
Right. And that's where I think painting teaches life lessons. And that's a perfect example of it. There's all projects that we start where it's just like, oh my God, if I would have known, or it's not turning out the way you want it to be, that you still see it through and finish it off. And I think sometimes too, in those situations, they become opportunities that maybe you end up shifting, changing something, and it ends up being one of your favorite pieces.
Right.
Has that happened?
Yeah, that happened a lot of times when I would be struggling with the piece for so long, and it's just would not do it for me. And then you put it aside, you don't look at it for a while. I think that's actually one of the really good strategies, not for art, for design as well. When I feel like when you struggle with something, it's good to completely switch off, do something different, forget about it, for a while, and then you pull it out and you look at it, and you start doing different things to it, just change your perspective, change your actions. And a lot of times that can completely turn it 180, and it becomes something great that you just didn't think it would.
Which is the gift in the gift.
Yeah.
So let's say someone is developing a new space, a property, maybe they're revamping their current footprint in the commercial sector. What's a good way to work with you, and kind of your process?
So I guess a lot of it depends on the goal. I think my best resource for people is if they're looking for something that's more unique, more bespoke, just because of the experience I have. I think my my value comes in more if like looking for unconventional design and conventional approaches, and it's not and it's both visual and functional. I really like studying the space and finding solutions for how it could be, how like you perceive the space in the best way, how you go through the space in the best way. So for me, that's, I think, what I bring the most. I think it's having some unique vision and something a little bit interesting.
Perfect. And another question is, do you sell pieces outright? Like pieces, do you have inventory? So let's say someone walks into their office and they're like, oh, this plain wall. Like today is the day I want to get something. Is there a
Right.
website
Yes.
that they can go to, or what would the process be for them in this scenario?
Sure. So that is for the art. If we're talking about, yes, I do have an inventory of pieces. They range from smaller to larger sizes, but it could be a commission work, which I think is good idea for a lot of people if they can trust the artist. If they feel like, I love this style. I like what I see. These are some examples, but for my space, I really need something in a certain size, in a certain scale, maybe like slightly different color schemes. And I've done something like that was specifically, I have a good example of commission work for friends of mine that was in a very peculiar kind of like wall shape. It was a sort of a triangular, kind of up high, that sort of a wall space under the roof. And they had like a specific color scheme that they had over there that they wanted to stick with. So we worked it through, and I created this sort of a like a triptych piece with the layering panels that was specifically tailored for that space. And I think it's a really good idea for a lot of people because it kind of gives them more of a perfect fit. But not everybody, for some people, it can be harder to envision something that's not there, and or they might not know what they want. So that's when I think ready-made art that's already there is a good idea. So there is some works on my website that are already there, and I'm continuing to make more and launch new collections. So just stay tuned, and there will be more pieces coming up.
Exactly. So as we end things for today, my dear, what is your website so people can go to your website, see more of your pieces, get a feel for it, and whether they want to buy one outright, maybe they're interested in commissioning, or maybe they have a coworker or someone else that's looking. What is that website?
Okay, yeah. So I have design side, and I have art side. So my design side, where you can get familiar with some of the interior spaces, it's not it's sorry, thinkhousedesigns.net. I almost was like reading through my email. So it's thinkhousedesigns.net. And you can just see, and I think it's also good just idea to kind of show what kind of environments they create as a designer, because I think it really translates a lot even to my art and vice versa. My art is nasiacraigart.com. So you can find me on both of these or contact me through both of these sites. And I also should mention that I will also have a show coming up in Overture Center in one of those galleries
Perfect.
in the summer. So I believe
Excellent.
I will have to say it's July, but I'll have to double check on that. It's coming up in a couple of months, so it will be very exciting, and I will definitely have more specifics on my website about when it is, from which date to which date, and there are some other events coming up too. So hopefully people can check it out and come and see when the show is up.
Perfect. Well, Nasia, thank you so much for joining me today. And it was a true joy connecting with you. I love your art. I love the spaces that you have truly transformed with your design, with your art. And I'm glad that our guests can learn more about you. If they're in the Madison, Wisconsin area, they can definitely come and visit your show. But thank you again. It was a true joy and pleasure.
Thank you so much, Heather. It was great talking to you as well. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.